right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in.
Awesome. So today's topic is something I think a lot of people are curious about, but maybe don't fully understand incident response.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that's crucial in cybersecurity, but it can be a little, well, mysterious if you're not in the thick of it.
Exactly. So we're going to try to demystify it today. Specifically, we're looking at best practices for investigations and remediation, and not just for one type of system, but across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux.
We're going broad today.
Yep. And to guide us, we've got this really fascinating academic paper that dives deep into practical techniques. So by the end of this, you'll walk away knowing not just what tools are used in incident response, but the why behind them.
That's the key, isn't it? Understanding the why can make all the difference.
Totally. So let's get right into it. First things first, the paper stresses the importance of having an incident response plan, or IR plan for short.
It's like absolutely essential. Think of it like a fire drill, but for cybersecurity. You know, you don't wait for a fire to start figuring out what to do.
Right, you got to be prepared.
Exactly. And a good IR plan is that preparation. It's a roadmap for handling a security breach.
Okay, so walk me through what that roadmap looks like. What exactly goes into an IR plan?
Well, it's got to have clear procedures, you know, step by step what to do. Then you need a defined chain of command, so everyone knows who's responsible for what. And of course, it has to include steps for identifying, containing, and remediating the problem.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing, right?
Definitely not. The landscape of cyber threats is always changing, right? So the IR plan needs regular updates and testing to make sure it's actually effective against the latest threats.
Makes sense. It's like a living document, constantly evolving. Okay, let's get into the tools. This paper mentions some really interesting ones, especially for different operating systems.
Yeah, tools are definitely a big part of incident response, but remember, they're just a means to an end. You need the knowledge and expertise to use them effectively.
Absolutely. But let's break them down anyway. Let's start with Windows. I saw Microsoft Defender ATP mentioned. What's that all about?
So Defender ATP is like a built-in security guard for Windows systems. It's always watching for suspicious activity, you know, like looking for signs of malware and other attacks. And if it finds something, it can help you react quickly.
That's cool. So it's like your first line of defense.
It's a good starting point for sure, but it's not a foolproof system. You know, there are other solutions out there like CrowdStrike or Sentinel that might offer like more advanced features or fit better into a larger security ecosystem. Really depends on your specific needs and resources.
Makes sense. You got to pick the tool that's right for the job. Okay, moving on to Mac OS. There's one that caught my eye. Little Snitch. Sounds intense in a good way.
Oh, it is. Little Snitch is all about giving you control. It acts like a gatekeeper for your network traffic, so you can decide what data flows in and out of your system. Like, say an application tries to send data to, I don't know, some suspicious server, Little Snitch flags it and lets you block it.
So it's like a personal firewall for every app on your Mac.
Exactly. And it's a really powerful tool for people who are serious about privacy and security.
I can see why. Now let's jump to Linux systems. The paper mentions Rkhunter for detecting rootkits. Now, rootkits are designed to be sneaky, giving hackers that admin control, but how does Rkhunter help uncover them?
Rootkit is like, imagine a bloodhound trained to sniff out rootkits. It scans your system for those telltale signs that a rootkit might be hiding there.
So what are these signs, these clues it's looking for?
Well, you see, rootkits often modify system files or processes to, you know, stay hidden. Rootkit has a whole database of these modifications, and it compares your system to that database. So if it finds something fishy, like a hidden file or a process running under a weird name, it raises a red flag.
Ah, I see. It's like a detective meticulously comparing notes to find those hidden clues. Pretty cool. So we've got a sense of some key tools for each system, but the paper really hammers home that just knowing the tools isn't enough.
Definitely. It's not just about like swinging a hammer. You know, you got to know where to swing it and why. You need to get to the root cause of the incident, figure out how it happened, and then use that knowledge to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's where thorough investigation comes in.
All right, so break down this thorough investigation for me. Where do we even start?
Imagine you're like a digital detective walking onto a crime scene. You wouldn't just rush in and start grabbing evidence randomly, right? There's a system, a method to it.
Got it. So what's the system here?
We've got three main areas to focus on. System logs, network traffic, and memory dumps. Each one tells a different part of the story.
Okay, break those down for me. What can we learn from each of those?
So system logs are like a computer's diary. They record events on the system. Things like when a user logged in, what files were accessed, what commands were run. It's all there in chronological order. Network traffic analysis, on the other hand, is like being able to see all the data flowing between devices on the network. This can be crucial for figuring out how an attacker might have moved around within your system or, how they got data out. And finally, memory dumps. These are like snapshots of the computer's memory at a specific moment. They can show us what processes were running, what data was being handled, even malicious code that was active in memory but didn't get written to the hard drive.
Wow. Okay, it's like putting together a puzzle using all these different pieces of information.
It is. And don't forget, sometimes the human element is key too. Talking to people who are involved, getting their perspective can provide really valuable context and insights.
Right, the human factor. Can't forget that. Okay, so we're gathering all this information, but the paper also talks a lot about evidence preservation.
Oh yeah, that's crucial. Just like at a crime scene, you don't want to contaminate or change potential evidence. You have to maintain its integrity.
So how do we do that in the digital world?
Well, it means carefully preserving those system logs, network traffic data, and memory dumps we talked about, making sure they're not altered in any way. Because if you need to build a case, you need that solid, untouched evidence.
It makes sense. All right, let's go back to the tools for a bit, round 2. For Windows, the paper mentions volatility. What makes that one special?
Volatility is all about memory forensics. Remember those memory dumps? Well, volatility lets us analyze those dumps and pull out some really valuable information. Like it can uncover malware that's hiding in memory, stuff that traditional antivirus might miss. It can even find passwords and encryption keys.
Wow, so it's like having X-ray vision into the computer's memory. Very cool. What about Mac OS? There's Sleuthkit and Autopsy mentioned. Those sound kind of intense.
They are, in the best way. Sleuthkit and Autopsy work together to do deep forensic analysis of disk images. Think of Sleuthkit as the workhorse, the command line tool that does the heavy lifting. And Autopsy, that's the user-friendly interface that lets you see and analyze the findings.
So they're like a dynamic duo working together to crack the case.
Exactly. They can carve out deleted files, reconstruct timelines of events, basically piece together the story of what happened on the system.
Like two digital detectives hunched over a computer connecting the dots. I love it. And finally, for Linux, we have Foremost and Scalpel. What do they bring to the table?
These guys are the file recovery specialists. They can recover deleted files even if they've been fragmented or partially overwritten. It's amazing what they can pull back from the brink.
So it's really about digging through the digital trash and finding those lost pieces of evidence.
You got it. It's all about putting that puzzle together.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. I feel like I've learned a ton. But to wrap things up, what are the core takeaways here?
First and foremost, having an incident response plan is not optional. It's your lifeline in a crisis. And remember, tools are great, but you need the knowledge to wield them effectively. Thorough investigation is key. And never underestimate the importance of evidence preservation. It's the foundation for everything else.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Any final food for thought for our listeners?
Well, we've talked a lot about traditional systems, but with more and more stuff moving to the cloud, I think it's worth asking. How do you think incident response needs to adapt to handle investigations in cloud environments? That's a challenge we're all facing.
That's a fantastic question. It definitely highlights that incident response is constantly evolving. We're always learning, always adapting. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that very question. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
See you then.